And I think one of the biggest things that's really missed in this was every insurance company is going to do this idea, can you do your job as performed in the national economy? And they try to really sugarcoat and diminish what the duties are. Oh, she was an RN, this and that. But you have to remember she was in the NICU unit, right? She's dealing with newborn babies that are in severe, problems right now. So to say anyone who may have a questionable cognitive problem should probably not be in that environment. It always frustrates the hell out of me when they just gloss over those types of things, They say, hey, doctor, do you think there should be any restrictions? They don't ask their reviewing doctor or tell the reviewing doctor, this is what the person does for a living. Do you think they should be able to do it? It's just simple. From what you see, do you think anything should be wrong? There's no context to the opinion that, Hartford's doctor was working in.
Hi, I'm Greg Dell here with attorney Stephen Jessup. And Stephen, today we're going to talk about one of your resolved cases against Hartford. I love coming in here and educating our potential clients and our clients about victories we've had on behalf of our clients against Hartford when they've been wrongfully denied long-term disability benefits. I'd like for you to go through why Hartford denied our client, what we were able to do, and then some tips that people can take away so that they could prevent themselves from being denied. So let's start with the background of the case.
Yeah, so the client, she was a registered nurse, worked in a neonatal intensive care unit, so NICU nurse. Her disability was predicated, she was in a car accident, hit her head, and the claim was predicated on a post-concussion symptom case, which can be very difficult because, everyone understands what concussion is, but how long it should be before you get better, things of that nature. So Hartford, acting as an administrator for the short-term disability, typical thing, approved the claim. Her employer was responsible for paying the benefit. But when it transitioned over to the long-term disability, that transition review is where they ended up ultimately denying the claim. We see that happen a lot, but here there was at least some things done by Hartford that at least made it understandable, why it had been done. And to her credit, my client's credit, being in the medical profession, she had the wherewithal, her neurologist, to have neuropsychological testing done prior to that transitionary period. And that testing did indicate that there was neurocognitive issues going on, major depression and anxiety. Hartford's reviewing neuropsychologist reviewed the testing. And what we see, and I'm sure you've seen it before, yes, neuropsychological testing can be objective evidence of a cognitive problem, but also how it's interpreted by a doctor can, vary from doctor to doctor. Hartford's reviewing doctor, got the data and made the determination that there was a lack of validity testing done. So you couldn't credibly rely upon anything, that there was nothing to indicate a severity of condition or problem that should result in continued problems from the concussion. I think brain scans at that time and stuff too were pending, so we didn't have that ability necessarily to do during the initial review period time on it. So they basically more or less said, hey, we understand you had this car accident, you hit your head. We think you should be better by now. The evidence doesn't seem to support that your inability to do your job, and then the denial occurred there.
So they never paid benefits on the long term?
Not on the long term initially, no.
And just to make sure I understood, the initial neuropsych testing was done how long after the accident?
I would say because within the elimination, probably only within 6 months of the accident.
Okay. And there was a 6-month elimination period, which means that your client had to wait 6 months before she would be eligible for a long-term disability benefit.
Correct.
Okay. So she was treating with what types of doctors was she?
Urologist was her main treating physician, general primary care, but the neurologist following the accident, that was the main treatment provider.
So what was your strategy for appeal? What did you do?
One of the hardest things we have is, since neuropsychological testing was done before we were involved, there's always a question, can anything be repeated? I've dealt with this before. So, my strategy in taking a look at it was, well, let's see if we can hire an outside doctor, an outside neuropsychologist, to get the raw data, to assess it, evaluate it, compare it against what the initial doctor's report was and the insurance company doctor's opinion. So I worked to do that first and foremost. I sent it out to the neuropsychologist, to do a review. And, his opinion at the time was too, is there were certain things that weren't done from a validity standpoint that should have been done, certain indexing, things of that nature. So since that hadn't been done, he actually did that as part of his review of everything, so he can draw a better overall picture of everything going on. In the situation, there was some I wouldn't say to credit, but in deference to some sort to Hartford's doctor, was it on the level of a formal mild neurocognitive disorder, or was it the almost PTSD from the action that was interfering? So we hashed out that there was an interplay between the two, certainly, but that there was the existence of it. And then also during this time, she was able to get an EEG of the brain, which was able to basically, through objective evidencing, support what the neuropsychological exam was saying about her issues of having a cognitive ability. So with that, and then her doctor, being able to just get their doctor's opinion on it, we submitted, the argument. I think one of the biggest things that's really missed in this was every insurance company is going to do this idea, can you do your job as performed in the national economy? And they try to really sugarcoat and diminish what the duties are. Oh, she was an RN, this and that. But you have to remember, she was in the NICU unit, right? She's dealing with newborn babies that are in severe, problems right now. So to say anyone who may have a questionable cognitive problem should probably not be in that environment. It always frustrates the hell out of me when they just gloss over those types of things, They say, hey, doctor, do you think there should be any restrictions? They don't ask their reviewing doctor or tell the reviewing doctor, this is what the person does for a living. Do you think they should be able to do it? It's just simple. From what you see, do you think anything should be wrong? There's no context to the opinion that, Hartford's doctor was working in.
I was talking to another lawyer today about that the disability insurance company, and this was a different one, sounds like in your claim as well, that basically they evaluate the claim almost like in a bubble. Mm-hmm. They start off, and this is how they train their people. We don't care what they do. I don't care if they were a mountain climber or a librarian where they were sitting at their desk all day long. Do they have any restrictions or limitations? And it's simply not reasonable to evaluate it in a bubble, because it's one thing to talk about, do you have any restrictions or limitations from normal activity to daily living, from feeding yourself, bathing yourself, walking, talking, eating, taking care of your finances, versus do you have restrictions from, now let me introduce working, let's just use your case, working in the NICU unit. Sometimes those are 12-hour shifts. Mm-hmm. They don't work normal 8-hour shifts. They work 12-hour shifts, maybe 3 days a week, and that's their job. And even if it was 8 hours, can this person be in that job, required to be on their feet, requiring to lift, requiring to make split-second decisions, requiring to monitor multiple patients who have multiple issues going on with themselves, versus can they do whatever they want to do on a daily activity, whether they have to exercise or go do groceries or take their kid to school? Two totally different animals. So it's not reasonable that these companies just do it like that. So probably what the conclusion was in your case, that there are no restrictions and limitations. So basically, go do anything.
I would argue, would she be able to do her activities of daily living? Yeah, probably. Maybe some issues here and there, but for the most part, could do all of these things without any issue. But that's not what it is. And, I've had a defense attorney years ago say, at the end of the day, they look for restrictions. If there are none, they don't even get to a vocational analysis. And that's what they do, where it should start with the vocational analysis. I'm waiting for an insurance company to tell me, like, well, the reason why we do it that way is because when you read our definition of disability, it's first is the condition causing issues that affects the ability to work, right? That's like the only, outside of like the nefariousness of just trying to find ways to deny any potential logical reason as to why they would look for restrictions. And then if only then do they look at the vocational and see how restrictions may affect their vocational, or the reality of it is the nature of the job, where, and if she had a job that was a receptionist, not take away from receptionist, she probably could still be able to do that. But to try to compare that to someone like in her job, you have to do the interplay. There has to be that.
Well, it's
you can't separate the two.
It would be like there's a job posting and it says, if you can sit for 6 to 8 hours a day and you know how to do basic math and you could walk for 2 hours a day, then come apply for the job. Well, our job requires us to sit for, 6 to 8 hours a day. And so does the job who is somebody who's an administrative assistant. The CEO of a company needs to be able to sit for 6 to 8 hours a day and type and use a computer. And so does somebody at a totally different job. But the responsibilities are completely light years apart. So you have to know in greater detail, well, what else is there? And the definition of disability is you are disabled if you're unable to perform usually the material duties of your occupation. Could be any occupation, but here it's your occupation. So you are disabled. What does disabled mean? It means unable to perform duties of your occupation. So you can't ignore the duties of this occupation. And what's even worse is when, I'm sure when they went, if Hartford in this case went and asked her treating doctors, they basically said, are there any restrictions and limitations? Not restrictions and limitations from being a NICU
Exactly.
doctor. And that's the game of what they do. So someone's watching this and going, that's what happened to me. Definitely happened to you, because that's what they do in almost every case. So fantastic that you won this claim, got it reversed, benefits reinstated, likely, unfortunately, going to have this battle again. And then if there's a change of definition in 24 months, but it's still a great victory. And what's nice about this case now is you're going to have a baseline, because you have your neuropsych testing that happened a year ago, and you don't want to repeat that more than once a year, but certainly I know at some point you will repeat that. And now we'll say, did it stay the same? Did it get worse? Was there improvement? And could make the claim easier for this person. I hope your client gets better.
Yeah.
And that's her hope. Yeah, because concussion, you don't know, it's brain damage. What we see with the football players and the CTE and everything else. And unfortunately, people have long-term effects of concussion because it's a physical brain injury. You didn't just wake up and all of a sudden, oh, I'm having processing disorders.
And I think it's interesting you say it in the sports arena with football players, because I think there's also this understanding in the general mind. Yes, we see that happen with football players, but they're back in 10 days, right? That's not how it always works. I mean, even famously in hockey, Sid Crosby was out for over a whole season because of a concussion. Right. So they're still like, all this research, great, but they're still not quite an understanding how long it takes for the brain to heal, if it does heal.
So if you're someone out there who has a Hartford short or long-term disability claim, feel free to reach out to Stephen, myself, any of our disability attorneys. No matter where you live in the country, we're available to assist you. We will always provide you with a free consultation, and we look forward to the opportunity to speak with you.